This camera costs $100. This one costs about $1,000, and at first glance they look almost the same, so naturally I had to buy this one and figure out what is going on, because this camera has 5K video, 72 megapixel photos, and even a flip screen just like the Sony's, which raises a weird question. Are companies starting to clone popular cameras now? Today I want to find out what this camera is and what happens when you compare it to the mirrorless camera that it's based on. Now, you may have been browsing Amazon recently, and cameras like this are everywhere, and the reviews are positive, the specs are convincing, and they look completely legitimate. Even I found myself second guessing if I had just spent 10 times what I should have on a camera that does the exact same thing. Is this just a cheaper version of the same camera without a Sony logo, and that's why it costs less? So I ordered it to find out, and it came the next day in a small box with a couple of batteries and accessories, and at first glance it looks way more real than I expected for $100. The layout is too familiar. The hot shoe is in the same spot, the same microphone capsule array right next to it, the shutter button with the zoom rocker, red outlined record button, even the little strap loops look nearly identical. The overall shape is exactly like the Sony. The bottom has a tripod mount, a smaller battery compartment, and the port setup is different. Instead of being behind the flaps on this side, it is on the grip side, but it still has USB-C and micro HDMI just like the Sony. The screen flips out and rotates in the exact same fashion. The back has a similar button layout, just with a scroll wheel that doesn't scroll. This camera is a touch smaller than the Sony, but nothing that even any savvy Sony connoisseur would notice out in the wild. If I saw this in someone's hand from more than, let's say, 5 feet away, I would think it is a Sony ZV-E10. According to the listing, this camera has 72 megapixels, 5K video, autofocus, and 6x optical zoom, which all sounds pretty incredible for only $100. But there is one small detail in the spec sheet, and that is the size of the sensor. It is 1/3 of an inch, equivalent to what your average webcam would have. Your iPhone has a sensor that is roughly 6 times larger for capturing light. Let's get slightly more technical. Real megapixels come from the physical sensor inside of a camera. It's hardware that captures the detail. But when a camera with a tiny sensor is claiming 72 megapixels, what is happening behind the scenes is it is capturing a much smaller image, and then it stretches it using software. So technically the file size is still 72 megapixels, but the details are not. Look at this file. It is 9,856 by 7,392 pixels. You'd think you could crop this just like you would a medium format image, but it's about as fuzzy as you can get. This is the equivalent of recording a 240p video and then exporting it at 4K. The file is definitely bigger, but the image doesn't magically gain detail and sharpness and colors. So let's take a look at some comparison photos and talk about performance. I'm using the kit lens on the Sony to give the clone a fair shot. Here are side-by-side images from the ZV-E10 Mark II, and I'm going to zoom in to give you guys a good look at the difference. The Sony is only a 26 megapixel sensor compared to 72 on the clone, so I'm zooming in a little bit more on the clone image because it is in fact bigger in terms of resolution. I will let you guys judge these images for yourself. Here is a portrait, and pretty noticeable difference. This is f2.8 on the clone versus f3.5 on the Sony kit lens. The autofocus on the clone camera did not work as well as expected. There is autofocus, but in general it hunts a bit and is lazy in other situations. I would say this is on par with a DSLR camera from about 15 years ago. When I tested this in video, you'll see that the clone doesn't even really try to gain focus, it just sits there. Now, if this camera could record 5K video for $100, that would be truly incredible, but unfortunately, this is what that looks like. Even though it is higher resolution, there is significantly less detail, less dynamic range, less color accuracy, and I will just say that the autofocus is struggling a little bit. It has autofocus, which is great, but it's not good autofocus by today's standards. And if you've been eyeing the tripod I've been using in this comparison, good, because this is the Falcam Tree Root Quick Lock Travel Tripod. Shout out to Ulanzi for sponsoring this video. This is the nicest tripod I've ever handled. I can't say that I've handled many nice ones, but years ago, I bought an expensive carbon fiber tripod and I never used it because it required tools in order to do anything with it. This tree root is intelligently designed. It sets up quickly, the legs lock with a quick twist, so it can be set up in seconds. It's made out of carbon fiber and aluminum, which keeps it very light for travel, but strong enough to support some serious camera setups. It has a ball head for quick adjustments, all-terrain feet so you can put it anywhere, and there's even a side mount for accessories like a mic arm if you want to set it up that way. The center column comes out so you can shoot really low angles quite easily, and it's all based on the F38 quick lock mounts, so using it with your other Ulanzi accessories is a breeze. My favorite part is the shape of these legs. When it's collapsed, carrying this around is so much easier and more comfortable than the traditional round leg tripod setup that you can't even really get a good grip around. It makes a significant difference if you use your tripod a lot. If you are looking for a well-designed, well-put-together, light, compact, strong tripod, this is well worth a look. I'll put a link down in the description so you guys can check it out. Now let's get back to these cameras. Now, talking about stability, both of these cameras have stabilization built in. The Sony has electronic stabilization plus the optical stabilization that's inside of the lens, whereas the cheaper camera must have only electronic stabilization. Here is what that looks like just walking handheld. Alright, I don't really want to rag on this little camera that much more. One last comparison, then I have a few final thoughts. The optical zoom on this one is an impressive 6x optical, and when you zoom you do see lens elements moving, so part of it is optical, but the extreme end is digital, at least in how it appears. It's not very quick to zoom, but there is a zoom, which is a good thing. This lens is a 3.2mm to 12.8mm f1.8 to f3.6 if we are to believe the text on the front of it. If you are going to try to record a sports event with this camera, you might not be as impressed with the results as the claims suggest. And there is no swapping lenses here. What you buy is what you get, and that's it forever. So the question that I have is, why does this camera exist? I don't think that they are competing with Sony, but I do think that they are trying to compete with what beginners think a real camera looks like. The flip screen, the body, the size, the huge specs, these are all features that sound impressive if you are buying your first camera, but it doesn't entirely translate into how the camera performs. And are people getting fooled by it? I don't know. I always have to remind myself that I live in this bubble where I understand cameras and lenses and what they do and how they look and how they perform. But if you were to rewind time and go back, let's say 15 years ago, I didn't have a single clue about cameras. And perhaps at that time, if I were to come across a camera like this one and pick it up and use it, I would have been impressed and I would have bought one and said, hey, look, it's not too bad. I still think there is a place for a camera like this, and no, I don't mean in the trash can. I think it's great if you want something inexpensive for a kid, if you want something almost disposable for travel purposes, or something that's super simple when you don't care much about sharpness or resolution or colors. It technically does work, but if you are hoping that it performs anything like a true mirrorless camera, it doesn't. That hasn't stopped more than 50 people from buying this little camera in the last month though, and I guess I was one of those who was sold a dream that wasn't quite as good as expected. But I do have another thought about this. The tough part about cameras like this, you might look at it and you might say, well, it's only $100, who cares? The issue is, if this camera stops you or delays you from getting a significantly better, truer camera with just a little bit more money saved up, something like a used Sony a6000. I'm not saying jump into a $1,000 ZV-E10 Mark II. You don't really need that, but an a6000, it's around $300 used nowadays. The first generation ZV-E10 that this little camera is based off of used is only around $500. It is more money, but if you are planning on developing your photography skills, eventually getting paid clients, you can start your career with these cameras, whereas it would be really, really difficult to do that with this cheap one. In my eyes, it's absolutely worth waiting and getting even an older Sony or Fuji or Canon mirrorless camera. But let me know down in the comments what your guys' thoughts are regarding this camera. Would you ever buy one? What would you use one for if you had one? because I am curious. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.